In the NFL, you're only as good as your last play. One snap, one decision, one mistake. That's all it takes to go from franchise icon on a Hall of Fame track to the next day never being looked at the same and out of the league soon. Starting with Cam Newton, and we all know the play. February 7th, 2016, Super Bowl 50, Carolina Panthers versus Denver Broncos. Cam Newton was the NFL's MVP. He had just led the Panthers to a 15-1 record, the best in franchise history. He was 26 years old, at the peak of his powers, and one win away from cementing his legacy as an all-time great. The game didn't go that way. Denver's defense suffocated Carolina all night. Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware were relentless. The Broncos hit Newton on nearly every dropback, but the Panthers were still in it. Trailing 16-10 in the fourth quarter with under 5 minutes left, Carolina had a chance. They were driving, and then Von Miller struck again. Newton drops back. Miller beats his blocker, strips the ball from Newton's hands. Newton hesitates. The ball is right there, loose on the ground. All he has to do is dive on it, fall on it, do anything to recover it. Instead, he pulls back. Denver recovers, and a few plays later, the Broncos punch it in for a touchdown. Game over, season over, legacy destroyed. The criticism was immediate and brutal. He didn't want it enough. He quit on his team. Superman doesn't dive for fumbles. And for a quarterback who built his brand on being fearless, on being Superman, it was devastating. Newton's career trajectory after that Super Bowl was a steady decline. Shoulder injuries, foot injuries, his accuracy suffered. His confidence wavered. The Panthers won 6-10 the next year. By 2020, Carolina had released him. He signed with the Patriots, struggled, then returned to Carolina for a brief stint in 2021 before fading out of the league. Another player who's fading out of the league is Russell Wilson. We also, unfortunately, all know the play. 26 seconds left. Seattle Seahawks down 28-24 to the New England Patriots. 1 yard from back-to-back championships. 1 yard from cementing a dynasty. They have Marshawn Lynch, beast mode. The guy who'd run over defenders his entire career. Instead, Wilson drops back to pass. Wilson takes a snap and fires a strike, right to Patriots cornerback Malcolm Butler, who reads it perfectly, jumps a route, and picks it off at the goal line. Game over, season over. That potential dynasty I was talking about? Yeah, that's over too. The immediate reaction was disbelief. Seahawks fans were devastating even years later. It's still the first thing people bring up when they talk about Pete Carroll or Russell Wilson. Before that play, Wilson was a rising superstar. 2 Super Bowl appearances in his first 3 seasons, a Super Bowl champion at 25 years old, the future face of the franchise. And after that play, he became the guy who couldn't finish. The guy who made the wrong decision in the biggest moment. Wilson's post-play career was really good for a while until it wasn't, and it's gotten ugly. They traded him to Denver in 2022, where he struggled and was eventually benched. Then he signed with the Steelers and looked old. Now he's a backup for the Giants after starting earlier this season, and he was even worse. His legacy was completely ruined. The irony is that Wilson was a franchise quarterback who did everything right for years, but 1 interception, and suddenly he's forever defined by what he didn't do. Another player who literally did everything right was Gary Anderson. He was literally perfect. That's the word that defined Gary Anderson's 1998 season. Not good, not great, perfect. 35 field goals made, 0 miss. The Minnesota Vikings were 15-1, the best offense in football. Randall Cunningham at quarterback, Randy Moss as a rookie, Chris Carter, Robert Smith. They averaged 34.8 points per game. They were unstoppable, and they had a perfect kicker. January 17th, 1999, NFC Championship game. Minnesota was heavily favored. This was supposed to be a formality. No good. The Falcons got the ball back, drove back down the field, and tied it with 49 seconds left. OT, Atlanta won the coin toss, marched down the field again, and kicked a field goal to win 30-27. Anderson played 4 more seasons after that. He finished his career as one of the most accurate kickers in NFL history. But that miss in the NFC Championship game is what people remember. Some plays don't just end careers because of mistakes. They end careers because of effort, or lack of it. And I'm sure the first person that comes to mind when I say that is Albett Haynes. Albett Haynes was supposed to be the answer. The Washington Redskins signed him to a 7-year, $100 million contract in 2009. He was a 2-time first-team All-Pro, a dominant defensive tackle who could single-handedly wreck an offense. Washington paid him like a franchise cornerstone. And then, on November 15, 2010, against the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football, he laid down. Third quarter, getting blown out. Haynesworth is supposed to be fighting through blocks, pursuing the ball carrier, getting to the quarterback, doing literally anything to help his team. Instead, he lies flat on his stomach on the grass, arms at his side, watching the play around him happen. Mike Vick throws a touchdown, and that essentially seals it for the game. Haynesworth became the instant symbol of everything wrong with overpaid, underperforming athletes. The Redskins suspended him. He played just 5 more games that season, and he got paid, and he stopped trying. Kinda seems the same with Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas was a Hall of Fame safety, 7 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pros, one of the best safeties of his generation, the heart of the Legion of Boom. He signed with the Ravens in 2019 and was playing well while making the Pro Bowl. And then Derrick Henry stiff-armed him into retirement. Lamar Jackson was the MVP, the defense was elite. They were supposed to roll through the playoffs, at least through the Titans. Instead, the Titans ran them over. Derrick Henry rushed for 195 yards. He punished the Ravens defense all night. And in that game, he delivered the play that ended Earl Thomas' career. Henry takes a handoff and he's out. Through the line, around the linebackers, and now it's just Earl Thomas left. And he stiff-arm him to turn around, and then he keeps going. Earl Thomas never played another NFL game. Thomas in early 2020 was caught up in a sex scandal with his brother, but he was released by the Ravens in August of 2020 after multiple incidents, including a fight with a teammate at practice. He was 31 years old, still in his prime, and his career was over. Now, Carson Wentz didn't quit, but it looked really bad when they lost to the lowly Jags. He was never looked at the same again. Win and in. That was the situation for the Indianapolis Colts heading into Week 18 of the 2021 season. Beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the worst teams in the NFL who had fired Urban Meyer earlier that season. Carson Wentz was supposed to be the guy who got them there. The Colts traded a first-round pick to Philadelphia to acquire him. He was a former MVP candidate, the franchise quarterback who could elevate a playoff-caliber roster. All he had to do was beat the Jaguars. But the Colts lost 26-11, and Wentz was terrible. He threw for 185 yards, 1 touchdown, and an interception. There was no urgency, no fire, no desperation from a guy whose season was on the line. The narrative around Wentz shifted permanently after that game. The Colts traded Wentz to Washington that offseason. He started 8 games with the Commanders and got benched. Then he went to the Rams and never really played. He became a backup with the Chiefs and never really played. And now he's with the Vikings and hasn't really played that much. Known as the guy who didn't have the fire to really carry his team, that sucked. Now, return specialists are never expected to carry a team, but they can flip a game in the most crucial moments, for better or worse. And unfortunately for Kyle Williams, it was for the worst. He was a wide receiver, a depth guy, someone who played special teams but wasn't the primary returner. But injuries happen, rosters get thin, and sometimes you end up in a role you're not ready for. January 22nd, 2012, NFC Championship game, San Francisco 49ers versus the New York Giants, and the Giants recover again. A few plays later, the Giants kicked the game-winning field goal. The Giants went on to win the Super Bowl, beating the Patriots again. The 49ers went home. He played one more season with the 49ers in 2012. He caught 10 passes for 142 yards, and that was it. By 2014, he was out the league. 2 fumbles in 1 game ended his career. And speaking of fumbles, this didn't end his career, but definitely our perception of him, and that's Mark Sanchez. Now, the Sanchez has been in headlines for other reasons recently, but for about 50% of my life, the butt fumble was known as the worst play of all time. Thanksgiving night, MetLife Stadium. The Jets were already struggling, what's new, but this was a chance to salvage the season with a division win on the biggest stage of the year. It didn't go like that. 1st and 10 at the Jets' 31-yard line. Sanchez takes a snap, opens to his left looking to hand the ball off. The play is botched from the start. Sanchez pivots, tries to salvage it, and starts running forward with his head down. Sanchez, still running blind, slams face first into Moore's backside. The ball pops loose. Patriots scoop it up and return it 32 yards for a touchdown. And the butt fumble was born. What made it worse was what happened next. ESPN's Not Top 10 segment, which highlights the worst plays of the week, featured the butt fumble at number 1 for 40 consecutive weeks. Mark Sanchez never recovered. 1 play, 4 seconds, 1 stabbing, and Mark Sanchez became a punchline. Another punchline was Dan Orlovsky. The Lions were 0-5 on their way to their first 0-16 season in NFL history. Dan Orlovsky was making his first career start as a quarterback. Late in the first quarter, the Lions were backed up near their own goal line, 3rd and 10 from the 1-yard line. Orlovsky takes a snap, drops back in the end zone, and starts scrambling. Any opening to get out of the end zone and avoid disaster. But he ran right into it, actually. He ran out of bounds, in his own end zone, on national television. Orlovsky played 12 more seasons in the NFL as a backup quarterback, but every single time his name comes up, someone mentions the safety. And if only Jake Delhomme had run out of the back of the end zone, that might have been better for his career. Jake Delhomme was supposed to be the underdog hero, the Cajun gunslinger from Louisiana. Undrafted out of college, spent time in NFL Europe, backup for years, then got a shot with the Carolina Panthers in 2003 and led them all the way to the Super Bowl. They lost to the Patriots, but Delhomme had arrived. He was a franchise quarterback, the guy who could take Carolina back to the promised land. By 2008, the Panthers were 12-4 in the NFC's 2nd seed. All Delhomme had to do was manage the game, avoid mistakes, and let the defense do the rest. He didn't do that though. Divisional round, Carolina Panthers versus the Arizona Cardinals. 2nd quarter, another interception. Arizona scores a touchdown. Then he throws another pick, another Cardinals touchdown. Jake Delhomme's final stat line was 17-34 for 205 yards, 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions, and a fumble. Delhomme never recovered. The next season, 2009, he threw 18 interceptions in 11 games. His confidence was shattered. The Panthers benched him, and in 2010, Carolina released him. His career was over at 35. Speaking of the moment being too big, we have Matt Schaub. Matt Schaub was a Pro Bowl quarterback. He was a legitimate franchise QB. And then in 4 consecutive games in 2013, he threw a pick 6. Week 2, fourth quarter, Texans down 24-16. Schaub drops back, tries to force a throw downfield, and it's a pick 6. Week 3, Houston Texans at Baltimore Ravens. Schaub throws it. Darryl Smith reads it, undercuts the route, and takes it 37 yards to the house. First quarter, game still scoreless. Schaub drops back, and you guessed it, he threw another pick 6. The Texans would bench him a few weeks later. In that offseason, Houston traded him to Oakland. He started 6 games for Oakland in 2014, threw 7 interceptions, and never started a full season again. He bounced around as backup for a few more years and then retired in 2021. Kickers live in a different world of pressure. One job, one moment, make the kick or don't. When they don't, especially in the playoffs, the entire weight of the season collapses on their shoulders, starting with Scott Norwood. The Super Bowl against the Giants, January 27th, 1991. Bills down 20-19. Norwood lines up for a 47-yard field goal to win the Super Bowl. The snap is good. The hold is clean. The kick has the distance, but it drifts right. Wide right. The Bills lose. And then they go on to lose 3 more Super Bowls in a row after that. He was out the league shortly after. Billy Cundiff, 2011 AFC Championship game, January 22nd, 2012. Baltimore Ravens at the New England Patriots, 32 yards to tie the game and force OT. Cundiff shanks it. The Ravens lose. Baltimore cut him immediately, and he played a few more seasons, but that was it. The Ravens would go on to draft Justin Tucker and win the Super Bowl the following year. Blair Walsh, wildcard, January 10th, 2016. Minnesota Vikings versus Seattle Seahawks. Vikings are down 10-9 with 26 seconds left. Walsh has been solid all year, and then he missed left. The Vikings lost. Walsh was cut a few years later and out the league just a few years after that. Lynn Elliott, divisional round, January 7th, 1996. Kansas City Chiefs versus the Indianapolis Colts. Elliott missed 3 field goals from 35, 39, and 42 yards. The Chiefs lost 10-7. Elliott never kicked in the NFL again, and Kansas City fans still call him the kicker who shall not be named. The double doink. Mike Vanderjagt. Indianapolis Colts versus Pittsburgh Steelers. 46 seconds left to send the game to OT. Vanderjagt missed badly right. The Colts lost. The Colts cut him. He signed with Dallas, missed 5 kicks in 12 games, and he was done. And speaking of Dallas, we have another infamous fumble in Tony Romo. Tony Romo wasn't supposed to be a starting quarterback. He wasn't drafted. He spent 3 years as the clipboard holder watching Drew Bledsoe run the Dallas Cowboys offense. But in week 7 of the 2006 season, coach Bill Parcells made the switch. He threw for 2,900 yards and 10 starts. Dallas fans were thrilled. After years of mediocrity, they finally had a quarterback who could sling it. But all that excitement was gone after the playoff game in typical Dallas fashion. Dallas Cowboys against the Seattle Seahawks. The game was tight all night. The Seahawks led 21-20 with $1:19 left in the fourth quarter. Fourth down, 19 seconds left. All Dallas had to do was kick a field goal. The snap came in low and fast. Romo reached for it, but the ball slipped through his hands and it hit the ground. He scrambled to pick it up, looking downfield for any open receiver, but there was nobody, so he tucked it and ran. Seattle Seahawks' Jordan Babineau dove from behind and tripped him at the 2-yard line. Romo went down inches short. The Cowboys season, which had been resurrected by his play over the final 10 games, ended because he couldn't hold a snap. Romo would go on to have a good NFL career. He made a few Pro Bowls, he threw for over 34,000 yards and 248 touchdowns, but he never won a playoff game after that fumble until 2014. The Romo can't win the big one narrative stuck with him his entire career. And 18 years later, it's still the first thing people remember. And I don't know how we'll remember Antonio Brown, who we'll end this video with. Antonio Brown didn't have one career-defining moment, he had a series of them, each one worse than the last, until the most talented receiver of his generation became unemployable. The first came in the wildcard round against the Cincinnati Bengals in 2016. Late in the fourth quarter, Bengals linebacker Vontaze Burfict delivered a vicious hit, helmet to helmet, on Antonio Brown. That hit might have changed everything. Brown was never quite the same after that. His behavior became increasingly erratic. By 2018, Brown was feuding with Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, and in 2019, Pittsburgh traded him to the Oakland Raiders. It lasted 4 months. Brown never played a single game for Oakland. He got into a dispute with the NFL over his helmet. Then he got frostbite on his feet from cryotherapy. Then he had a heated confrontation with general manager Mike Mayock. The Raiders released him before the season even started. But the moment that truly ended everything for Antonio Brown's career happened on January 2nd, 2022, Week 17. Tampa Bay Bucks at the New York Jets. Brown was on the field for 26 plays, and then he wasn't. Something happened on the sideline. He then threw his shirt and gloves into the stands, ran across the back of the end zone, waving to fans, and disappeared into the tunnel. The game was still going on. Bucs coach Bruce Arians said after that game that Antonio Brown was done. The team would release him just a few days later. It was over for him. One of the greatest receivers in NFL history, a guy who should be a first ballot Hall of Famer, walked out the field mid-game and never came back. 7 Pro Bowls, 4 first-team All-Pros, over 12,000 receiving yards, and it all ended with him shirtless, waving goodbye to Jets crowd on a cold January afternoon. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you're new and click the video above if you like the content.